Okay, we're now inside the information center, or the interpretive center. Off in the distance there, you can see Monk's Mound that we climbed up yesterday. There'll be a 17-minute movie that we'll watch in about a half an hour. Now we'll make a tour of the museum. The process of building one of these canoes, which is no surprise, was you used axes and adze, A-D-Z, or how you pronounce that, to chop out the rough dimension, particularly on the inside and the outside. But also on the inside, most importantly, was burning with small controlled fires that would then char the wood, and then with chert you could chip that away or slice that away and begin again. We can see the aftermath of the burning process, but notice how thin the hull could be made relative to the material being used in the process. Dated AD 1310, 1450, or 600 to 700 years old. This is a beautiful full-size diorama. The problem, of course, is that the light reflection with this glass is so profound that you can't make it out, let alone not be able to photograph it. Notice how thick that thatched wood roof is. This is really big and huge. You can get a real sensation of how it might have been in the day. Notice that the houses are on stilts, both protection from the water floods as well as roaming animals if that was an issue, or maybe even kept some kinds of critters out. Might have been cooler. Notice how here just a series of mats are used to build a dwelling. The mats are used for the walls. Rather comfortable environment, really, isn't it? Pestle and mortar reminiscent of our butter churns. So many ancient cultures, the evidence in the bones of arthritis is the direct result of this posture. Loss of teeth because of the stone material that was mixed in with the ground, the grain. The use of corn produced a massive incidence of tooth decay in the cultures that predominantly ate corn. Notice the set of tools over there used for shaping bowls. We've seen those in museums. Notice how he carries his arrows as opposed to a quiver. I wonder if anyone's done a documentary on, or written a report on the history of and the technique for making a bow. So this building was a granary, thus raised above the ground to keep most of the critters out, but mice can still get in. But it looks like they used that same kind of mud surfacing as we saw on the stockade to perhaps provide greater security against varmints, and maybe did something similar to the floor also and the walls. Interesting that control of trash was an important function. It also became an important repository for archaeologists hundreds of years later. I wonder how this dynamic may be reflected in even more ancient cultures throughout the world. Certainly such craftsmen were considered the great artists of their time. Certainly, these kind of tools were a mixture of art and function, probably at its highest level, just like the iPod and the iPhone might be construed today. Notice the various symbols and designs on his body representing status. It's interesting too, and good to see in these models the character reflected in the faces, just as we would expect from humans today. There isn't much difference within 1,000 years of time, but we tend to want to think of more ancient people as being childlike, naive, not that bright. For people of small physical stature, you had to be pretty tough to sling one of these rock axes around. So it gives us an idea of how necessary and therefore popular were these kind of tools. It's interesting that in archaeology, in different eras, in different parts of the world, caches of tools or weapons or money are found. Why? Not to mention the locations. Oftentimes, caches are found, small ones, outside of a doorway of perhaps a religious building.